Everybody stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Set.
Here.
Wakefield. Here. Knutson. Here. Kennedy.
Here.
Brock. Here. Hall.
Here. All right, first thing up is comments, suggestions from citizens present. So we've got a new system. This is our first meeting where we're using the new system. What we want is that anybody that makes a comment is to sign in so that we have your correct spelling of your name and your address, and that way you don't really have to. You can give us your name at the podium. You won't have to give us your address. We will have that on the sheets, but we need that on the sheet. The sheets, I believe, were outside.
The cards are outside, right on the table where the agendas are.
Okay.
And there's a little sign there telling them to put their cards into the yellow bin over there.
And what I hear right now is that we don't have any cards filled out.
Yep.
Which would indicate that nobody cares to make a public comment.
Yes.
Okay, everybody good? I'm getting confirmation from the front row.
Yes.
That's great.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so no citizen comments tonight. We have a presentation by Seth Zeziger, U.S. Department of Agriculture, APHIS Wildlife Services regarding resident Canadian goose population along the St. Croix River. So hopefully we're up and running.
And I think Seth can at least hear us and maybe speak. Seth, go ahead.
Seth, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
See if we can get this to work.
Okay. Oh,
How's
there we
that
go.
look?
Yes. We're very excited over here that you were able to do that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, so name's Seth Zessiger, Assistant District Supervisor with Wildlife Services in northwestern Wisconsin. Let's go ahead and start this. So Wisconsin Wildlife Services do a variety of things in Wisconsin. Not limited to, but also including bear damage, nuisance bear damage work, nuisance beaver work, wolf damage mitigation, and wildlife crop damage assessments. Bear with me one moment while I try navigating some Teams things here. Okay, I think I got it. So yeah, our efforts may include technical assistance, which is just simply giving advice to callers that might be having some problems that we believe that we can resolve with just talking them through it and providing some advice, or it may involve direct control, which would be hands-on on our part. Canada geese, and specifically, two distinct populations in general terms of Canada geese in Wisconsin. Resident geese, which are the ones that stay year-round, and migrants. So as the term suggests, resident geese remain in Wisconsin year-round. Migrants typically pass through or nearly through the state as they head south for the winter and north in the spring. With those two separate populations, that does also involve separate approaches aimed at managing damage. In general, the resident geese are the ones that are associated with nuisance problems. As stated, they breed and live in Wisconsin year-round, very productive, average anywhere from 5 to 7 young per nest, live a long time, have learned to adapt to live alongside humans, and have a high site fidelity, meaning that where they are born, where they learn to fly, that is generally where they return year after year. And I'm sure, as you guys have experienced, when they have a clutch of eggs, whatever brood survives, they generally also come back the following year, and then your population tends to grow quite exponentially, increasing the problems that come along with that. A little bit of background on Canada goose history. As hard as it might be to believe, Canada geese nearly went extinct due to unregulated harvest. This did prompt focused conservation and reintroduction efforts by wildlife officials, including a captive breeding program. Efforts were very successful, so much so that current goose populations in Wisconsin are about 1,200% greater now than they were prior to 1990. Recent data does show somewhat of a decline. However, the long-term trend over the past 39, 40 years does indicate a steady, gradual increase in the population. If you guys have any questions as I'm going through these, just feel to jump in. So one of the reasons for the successful comeback of Canada geese is that they do have a very good ability to successfully adapt to their environment. They're able to nest in locations not typically associated as ideal nesting habitat and are quite tolerant of human presence. Not only are they very adaptable, but many of our current day conditions, such as maintaining short, well-manicured grass in close proximity to waters, can cause them to flourish. Urban and suburban environments provide them with more safety from natural predators than they might otherwise encounter in a rural environment. And these urban and suburban environments are often a rich and abundant source of food. Goose populations, as stated, have recovered very successfully and to such an extent that they can sometimes become victims of their own success. Some of the conflicts that manifest from their large populations include urban and aesthetic concerns, such as concerns with goose droppings. Again, as I'm sure that the city has experienced, geese can generate an astonishing amount of waste. One single goose can defecate every 15 to 20 minutes and generate up to 2 pounds of waste per day.
Wow.
So this does cause other concerns such as erosion from shorelines, just due to their presence, and overgrazing if they're stripping the grass or clover or whatever's been seeded down to maintain a lawn away. That can contribute to erosion, and as they're entering and exiting the waterway, just that foot traffic alone can also contribute to erosion. Also related to a high concentration of goose fecal matter is an issue called nutrient loading, which occurs when goose droppings, which are rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, are deposited into water bodies to such an extent that it can cause harmful algal blooms. And this can in turn cause any associated fish populations to decline because algae sucks up a great deal of the oxygen that is in the water. And of course, high goose concentrations also result in decreased park use because nobody wants to bring their kids to an area that is just simply covered with goose scat, and it also adds to maintenance costs to clean up said goose scat. Geese can also cause even more direct conflicts that impact health and safety. Territorial geese may attack pedestrians, collide with aircraft, and also present a traffic hazard. They also introduce a number of different harmful bacteria into the environment. Goose droppings can contain harmful bacteria or parasites such as Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, Giardia, and a number of others. Geese can also cause an extensive amount of agricultural damage. As I mentioned earlier, we're involved with the Wildlife Damage Abatement and Claims Program in Wisconsin, which is a program that the state offers and counties can participate in. One of the species that are eligible for damage compensations and abatement measures through that program are Canada geese. Typically see Canada goose damage to forage crops such as alfalfa or clover, corn or soybeans. And in 2025, Canada geese damaged about 480 acres of agricultural commodities in the state, valued at about $60,000. And just keep in mind that this damage was only assessed on fields that participants entered or enrolled into the wildlife damage program. So there's certainly a great many more acres and more monetary loss that was suffered by farmers that chose or were unaware that they could enter into the wildlife damage program. Geese can also damage natural resources. Primarily, what we see is damage to wild rice. The last several years, we've been involved with wild rice restoration up in the St. Louis River estuary, where we've captured geese that were damaging wild rice, and it's very apparent where geese do this damage. If you look at that picture in the lower left, there's an exclusion cage around some wild rice, and a lot more productive than anything that was outside the exclusion cage that the geese damaged. So not only does this impact Wisconsinites that enjoy wild rice is also a spiritually and culturally important in Native American society, since it is central to their role in their creation story. So what can be done to help address these problems? One of the first steps that we can take is to just educate the general public. A no feeding ordinance is often a good first step. Like other wildlife, such as bears, if a black bear knows that it can go to a bird feeder every night and get free food, it continues to return. Much the same, geese, if they know that they can go to the beach or the park and everybody's throwing them breadcrumbs, they're just going to continue to return. So the public should be aware of that. And they should also be aware of the many negative bacteria and parasites that high concentrations of geese can introduce. And finally, just like when we're out goose hunting and trying to attract geese to our setups, if we throw out a large number of goose decoys, often successful at attracting other birds, same function for geese that are congregated at a beach or a public park. Any migrant birds or even other resident birds that are flying around, if they see a large concentration of geese, they are more apt and prone and attracted to that area. They want to hang out with other geese. What else can be done? What more hands-on methods can we take to try deterring goose presence? So we can allow grass to grow longer. Geese love short grass. It's easy for them to walk through. It's easy for them to feed on. We can try rip-wrapping shorelines, allowing some vegetation, some brush to grow up between shore and mowed grass. Geese do not typically like to walk through taller vegetation, although they will. We do acknowledge that these aren't always practical approaches to take just based upon a site-specific scenario. If, for example, a shore is at a location that's for the enjoyment of the general public, so rip-wrapping that area is probably not going to achieve our goals. Physical exclusion, also another option, again with the caveat that this doesn't always work well in all situations. It can be difficult at beaches, parks, boat landings. If we're wanting to allow people to enjoy the water and we have a fence thrown up across that, doesn't really work well in that situation. Other options, direct and physical harassment. Number of items here, scare devices such as coyote effigies, mylar flagging, scare eye balloons, propane cannons, pyrotechnics, harassment with trained dogs. These all can have a limited amount of success. Geese are intelligent creatures. If we put out a coyote effigy, scare eye balloon, mylar flagging, it doesn't take them too many days to figure out that, hey, that thing is not moving. It's not doing anything to hurt me. And you'll go out there after a week and there'll be a goose laying down right by the coyote effigy. Something that can increase the effectiveness of those tools is if they get moved around every several days, so that the geese just aren't used to seeing that effigy balloon flagging in one location. So the management authority, geese are a migratory bird. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does have the overarching management authority for migratory birds. However, with the abundance of geese, there is a standing depredation order that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has delegated to the continental 48 states, which means that the state has the ability to control goose populations without there necessarily being a need to get a federal removal or depredation permit. So in Wisconsin, this could be a nest and egg permit, which allows for the destruction of goose nests and eggs, again, without the need for a federal permit. However, registration with the Fish and Wildlife Service and with the state of Wisconsin is required to conduct those activities, and there is a permit application through Wisconsin that needs to be filled out. Let's see. So that was nest and egg permit, likewise for a roundup, more active control, a goose roundup. Again, the Fish and Wildlife Service has empowered the state of Wisconsin to conduct those activities. Those activities have been delegated by the state to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Wildlife Services. A permit application would need to be submitted to the state. Again, that permit has no associated costs. So even though Fish and Wildlife, state of Wisconsin does have that overarching authority to manage populations, it is a local decision as to whether or not you want to take advantage of those methods. Twofold approach for dealing with goose conflict in Wisconsin. Number one approach, manage overall population through hunter harvest. This can impact migratory geese and resident geese. In Wisconsin, there is an early goose season that starts September 1st and runs through the 15th. There's a daily bag limit of 5 associated with that early season. The regular season starts on September 16th and runs through December 16th, and the daily bag limit is reduced to 3. I believe the reasoning for that is higher daily bag limit early in September, you're more likely to target the resident geese, whereas the smaller bag limit on the regular season is probably more apt to be targeting migrants at that time. So that's one approach. Second approach would be site-specific management, which would target the resident geese, the ones that are most often causing these nuisance conflicts. So site-specific measures, as mentioned, that might include egg oiling to limit the population growth. This helps prevent the population from growing and reduces re-nesting attempts. If eggs are oiled, what that does is it blocks that oxygen barrier, so oxygen can no longer seep through the shell itself and get to the embryo. Essentially just shuts off oxygen and causes the embryo to expire. A goose doesn't know that. So if we oil eggs, that goose pair, they're going to continue to nest at that site. Eggs have to be incubated for 25 to 28 days in order to remain viable. If eggs are oiled early on, those geese will stay on the nest for the duration of that time. And once they finally do realize that the eggs are no longer viable, the likelihood at that point that they're going to attempt to re-nest is considerably reduced. Cheap, effective, quick, just coating eggs with vegetable oil. Again, as mentioned, this would require a free DNR permit. Permits available on the DNR's website, or we can provide it. Cooperator or complainant would fill that out, return it to Wildlife Services. We would fill in a couple of additional sections and then send that to the DNR for processing. It would also require registration with the Fish and Wildlife Service that you are going to be attempting nest and egg destruction. There are a couple of reports associated with those permits that need to be provided by October 31st at the conclusion of nest and egg destruction attempts. One of those reports goes to the Fish and Wildlife Service through that registration location. online, and one is provided to the DNR. As mentioned, another site-specific mitigation effort is Roundup and euthanasia. When these birds are rounded up, they will be euthanized. They will not be relocated. Relocation has been attempted in the past and has been found to be unsuccessful. As mentioned earlier, geese have a very high site fidelity. They are able to navigate back to their birthplace, to where they learn to fly. So how are we able to capture geese? Well, geese molt towards the end of June, early July. When they molt, they're flightless. And so, as you'll see in some of the pictures coming up in this slide, we basically surround them with panels, make like a large corral, and just keep working closer and closer until they're enclosed and can't escape. And then we're able to enter that small corral and grab them and put them in cages for transport. When geese are euthanized, they're euthanized via CO2. We have a CO2 chamber. We place the geese in that, turn on the CO2, and within several minutes they have expired. A couple of options as to the disposition of geese that are euthanized. They can be processed and donated to a food pantry, which has some additional expense. There's limited opportunity to donate them to a captive carnivore facility, or they could be simply landfilled. There are some current concerns with avian influenza that you may or may not have heard of in the news that could influence the disposition of geese that are captured during roundup efforts. As of this time, nothing has been communicated to me that there are any confounding factors that might influence the disposition, but that may or may not change in the next couple of months. So if the council or the complainant or the cooperator does decide that they might want to donate geese that are rounded up to a food pantry, as mentioned, there's some additional expense to that. So during the first 2 years of a roundup, or that roundups are conducted, 10% of the geese that are captured, the adult geese, since juveniles aren't donated to a food pantry, there's not enough meat there to make it worth the processor's while to butcher those birds. So 10% of the adult geese that are captured have to be tested, or a minimum of 5 birds. They're sent to a lab in Madison to be tested for a number of toxicants, including PCBs, mercury, lead, and other pesticides. Last price figure that I was quoted for testing was $200 per sample. So that would be one increase of the expense of doing a roundup if the complainant decided that they wanted to donate birds to a pantry. And then the second expense, of course, would be the butcher fees for the processor that butchered the birds. And that fee could fluctuate just depending upon the amount of birds that were captured and donated. I believe the last one that I was involved with in 2024, where the complainant wanted to donate geese to a food pantry, that bill was around $1,500. And obviously, if when the birds are tested, contaminant levels exceed what's safe for human consumption, those geese cannot be donated and will be disposed of. What's the effectiveness of a goose roundup? So we would have an immediate effect. If we removed geese from a site-specific area, that is obviously going to have an immediate effect. It's going to reduce the number of birds that are on site. Be aware, though, that difficulty of capturing these geese can vary and can be influenced just based upon a number of factors, including complexity of the site or sites that we're working at. Likely that 100% of the geese won't be captured. There's usually 1 or 2 that aren't on site when we are. We'll get the bulk of them, and there might be a few stragglers, or there might be some migrants that move in after the fact. But when we do reduce through a roundup the immediate goose population, that does give the other abatement options that we discussed earlier a chance to work. So those hazing options, coyote effigies, active hazing by a trained dog, people chasing them with UTVs or 4-wheelers, all that stuff is more likely to work when goose population is reduced. What's another benefit? If you have fewer geese on site, it's likely to attract fewer migrants. You know, if we go back to that example that I gave when we're out goose hunting, if we have 5 decoys out on a field instead of 50, it's less likely to attract more birds. Other benefits: provides long-term management. You remove the breeding birds, gives more opportunity for nest destruction and egg oiling to work and to maintain populations. Likely that roundups will be needed in future years to maintain populations if harassment and egg oiling nest destruction efforts are ineffective at maintaining or keeping the population low. Ideally, these non-lethal measures, these mitigation measures, are in place before a situation gets out of hand. That's not always the case. You know, some situations there's 100 geese there before anybody realizes it. But by knocking the population back, it allows those other methods to have a better opportunity to work. So what happens prior to, during, and after a goose removal? It is guaranteed to be controversial. So I'm sure the council is no stranger to controversy. Rest assured, it will be controversial. This may include articles in the paper, letters to the editor, social media posts, protests, attempts at interference, demands for resignation, public officials being inundated with calls and emails. If it's a possibility, it likely will happen. It can get kind of ugly. So if a goose roundup is something that's being considered, brace yourself for that. General cost of a roundup could be anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000, again, just depending on logistics, complexity of the locations that we're working at. A couple of years ago, we were in one city that it wasn't just one specific location, it was a half a dozen. Obviously, something like that's going to take a little bit more time, cost a little bit more money. Recommendations. Consider the timing of your actions. As you guys have likely found out, geese can be difficult to disperse once they establish nests or have youngs. Migrants, since they aren't locked into a location, they're just migrating through, they can be more easily harassed. Like we discussed, deterrence prior to establishment of large populations, harassment prior to nesting attempts, timely nest and egg destruction activity. These can all help the situation from getting worse. Possibility to modify some habitats, which can increase the difficulty that geese have to just walk right from the water to the short grass where they like to feed. There is a taste repellent that has mixed reviews that can be applied to grass. Possibility of heading off some of the controversy by letting the public know well ahead of time what's going on. Some people find these activities a little bit more palatable if they know that the geese are going to be donated to a food pantry. In my experience, regardless of all that, there is going to be some pushback and some controversy. What's an acceptable population management goal for Canada geese? As I mentioned, it's unlikely that we're going to eliminate all of them. And even if we were likely to eliminate all of them, or able to eliminate all of them, in future years, you can almost bank on geese coming back. Geese are attracted to that location because they can prosper there, they can flourish there. It's got what they want. It's got water, short grass, an abundant food source, not as many predators as in rural environments. And lastly, as mentioned, be as proactive as possible. Ideally, some of these measures would be in place before the population gets out of control, before the goose issues get out of control. But again, that's not always reality. As mentioned, be aware of laws and regulations. kind of a multi-step approach there. Some federal regulations to be aware of and some state regulations. Pretty simple to navigate. All this does have to pass through Wildlife Services as far as nest and egg permits and roundup permits, and so we can certainly walk complainants or cooperators through that process. Any questions that I may be able to answer for anybody on the council?
Anybody?
I had one question, just, so is the elimination of the population, the order, like the nest and egg thing won't work if there's a certain number of population? Do you know what's the over-under on that?
It will work to eliminate future recruitment to the current population just by making those eggs unviable. They won't hatch, but it won't do anything to address the current population. The adult geese that are on site are going to stay on site.
So for that to be successful, it almost has to be an elimination first and then some of the other as a maintenance program.
You know,
That would increase your likelihood of success.
one of the,
If you were able to find every single nest that was in the vicinity and successfully oil the eggs and destroy the nests, you would eliminate future recruitment. But if you have 100 geese there at that point, you're still going to have 100 geese after the nest and egg destruction.
no, I believe one of the other concerns here, though, is that, like down on the river, what we're talking about, because of the public beach being closed frequently, a lot of those geese nest in Minnesota.
And that is a problem. We would not be able to obtain a permit from Minnesota to drive geese out of Minnesota waters into Wisconsin waters. This was an issue on our St. Louis River Estuary project. Minnesota was involved with that project themselves, and it still took 3 years to get that permit to work in Minnesota waters. So I can say with confidence, we would not be able to drive geese out of Minnesota, and you would not be able to operate with a Wisconsin nest and egg permit in Minnesota to get those nests and eggs.
But by our beaches, we could do.
On your beaches, you could, and I believe that there's several islands in the river there that are within Wisconsin waters that you could do it on.
And they also go into Lake Malibu as well.
Yeah,
Correct. Yep, and you guys could use it there.
yeah.
Signs that say no Minnesota.
So your
And yet-
recommendation, Seth, is to do a multi-tiered approach and starting with you guys, we've begun filling out those forms already, waiting and for the council to do their final piece, but to fill out those forms, and then when can we start the process of the roundup and things like that? When does that start for us? And are you involved in that? Do you have a team that comes up? And if I'm understanding, you'll probably need some of our public works people as well to help with that roundup.
Correct. So I would be involved with it. I would put together a team of technicians, 7 to 8 of our guys, 2 to 3 from the city, and that process would probably occur late June through early July. That's when the geese are molting and flightless. As far as the nest and egg, as soon as that gets back to me, I sign off on it, send it to the DNR for processing. That process could start immediately.
Okay, is there training on the nest and egg that you would provide us, or is there a person that would come up to do that piece?
No training on the nest and egg, but I could send you some supplemental materials with instructions on approaches on how best to do it. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
So is there a good way to find the nests?
Look for the.
That they,
I could almost guarantee, at least without being on site, I would certainly think that there'd be something on those islands. The nests that I've found, they're typically in hummocks surrounded by water with some taller grass on the perimeter of the nest. That seems to be where they like to nest. It can be a chore to find goose nests.
and once you found them, do you have suggestions on how to get the mothers off the nest?
They'll probably squawk at you quite a bit, may hiss at you, may come at you. I've never had them do that to me necessarily approaching a nest. They'll hang around, don't get me wrong, but I've never had an interaction, not saying that it couldn't happen, of course, but I've never had an interaction where they've come right at me while I'm on or near a nest. If you got a push-pull or something just to keep them at bay, it would work well for that, for people to operate in teams. One to keep the adult goose pair at bay while the other one's working on eggs.
Okay. Just for a little more context here, I just want to let everybody know what we're talking about is the goose population on the river, and exclusively with this discussion. And the reason being is because our North Bay is polluted frequently. We have, Mike Morales could probably explain that. I know they monitor it on a daily basis, but we've had E. coli, we've had high fecal content. It is, and I think the feces also line the bottom of the river, or the river bed. It creates a huge problem. We have a public beach. We moved our beach house to the North Bay so that we'd have a nice, quiet, safe beach for families, and we're finding that the families can't utilize it because of the pollution there. And so we really need to do something about this. It's not going to get better without us intervening. So that's just the context here. So we're not talking about anywhere else in the city. We're just talking about the river.
Right, and so from looking at the site, I would anticipate there'll be geese on these islands. And, I don't know if it's the same population of geese or not, but I would guarantee there's stuff up in the lake as well. So, yeah, I guess getting back to an individual that asked about recommendations, with an established goose presence, it can be very difficult to get a handle on it using the mitigation techniques that we had talked about. I think that there'd be a pretty good opportunity for a reset, a very good opportunity for a reset with a successful roundup. Typically when we're approached by a city or an entity, they've exhausted some of those other options. But you may have problems getting the situation under control with a well-established large goose population.
Which we have,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I think we've counted some of the flocks upwards of 80.
Any questions?
This is an item later on the agenda after the presentation. We have it as old business on the agenda
Yeah.
for approval. And I think we have an approval not to exceed a certain amount on there.
Okay, so,
That was good information. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I could stick around for.
Yeah, I think, Seth, that'd be good, so that maybe some questions will pop up as council
Yeah.
members have a chance to think about this for a little bit.
Yep, I can stick around.
All right, I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you. Consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from the March 2nd, 2026 regular council meeting. Approve the claims in the amount of $1,861,349.69. Approve amendments to the 2026-2027 CIP. Approve steps to acceptance 5K fun run walk. Approve Valley-wide Pride Festival. Approve Minnesota Orchestra performance in Lakefront Park. Approve Gopher to Badger race. Approve Coco's Hearts Doggy Day 5K. Approve Booster Days 2026. Approve bid from Benson Excavating LLC in the amount of $93,986.57 for the 2026 alley improvement project. Approve Bolton and Mink letter of engagement for the 2026 construction inspection services in the amount not to exceed $150,000. Approve no parking during school days on Burl Oak Curve. Approve the installation of no parking signs on Burl Oak Curve. Approve MSA Professional Services Incorporated for 2028 Hanley Road Trail Improvement Engineering in the amount of $130,420. Approve Certificate of Compliance Amendment for Groceries and Bakery LLC at 2421 Hanley Road, Suite 800, Cameron Sasa and Elisa Gulen. Approve the sale of surplus fire apparatus.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, so just so everybody knows, I don't know if you caught that, but the motion to approve includes everything except item D.
Yep, they withdrew.
That withdrew the fit real estate.
That was good.
Okay. Motion and second to approve, roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Motion's approved, consent agenda is approved. Discuss options to mitigate Canadian goose problems in Lakefront Park. So, I mean, this is obviously now whether we're going to approve trying to do what Seth had talked about.
Well, I think we have it's a big issue, and it's been there. Let's just say I used to go to the feed mill that's on the corner of First and fed it corn.
With the signs out there that said duck crossing.
Yeah. So, you know, this is much like the deer population that we had with issues as well. And I was dead set against that because I don't mind wildlife, but at the same time, people are investing in stuff, gardens, flowers, not to mention the safety and security of people on the streets crossing the highway. So I relented and agreed to that. We need to thin our deer herd. And Joyce and I were talking about it at public safety. There's still a lot more to be done there. These geese are no different. They're impeding onto our parks. And not only that, with the scat, it's healthy, it's not safe. They've chased children. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've been chased by them. But it's just, there's too many of them. I do not want anybody to touch the swans, and I don't think that's what we're talking about.
No.
But these geese probably need
And the
to
swans
go.
are gone in the summer anyway.
Yeah,
Geese are not.
yeah, but I just want to make it clear, but we need to do it, and unfortunately, I think the only way to do is round them up and send them on their way,
Yeah,
my opinion.
It needs to be a multi-tiered approach, which is why the staff is seeking approval to submit for the Canadian goose nest and egg depredation permit, the migratory bird depredation permit, in addition to contracting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife for the depredation services and costs not to exceed $10,000, which would include, if we were going to donate to food bank, that would be the meat processing and donation piece would all be a part of that 10,000. So that's the recommendation of staff.
So was the when it ranged between 3,000 and 5,000, was that per year? I'm just wondering where we're going with 10.
Yeah, well, there could be the additional costs of either disposal of them or if we're gonna send them off for butcher. We don't know how many we have. And then, like they showed, there's probably 1,500 for the testing of them if we're gonna use them that way for one of the local food banks.
Okay.
And if you have upwards of maybe 80 geese, including, I mean, if there's gosling or the smaller ones, they're not gonna be much meat, so they're not gonna spend time with those. They're gonna spend time with the larger ones. That's a lot of
So
slaughter.
it's 1 year though.
processing.
You're saying the 10,000 is 1 year.
For at least this year, and I don't think we're gonna touch that amount. We're probably gonna be somewhere between 5 and 10, I would imagine, but I don't know what the number is. I don't think, Seth, you don't know what the exact number is going to be with your costs?
I don't, without having eyes on the situation to get a handle on how many sites we're gonna try to conduct roundup at, how many geese we're dealing with. It's difficult to say.
I think we'll have a better
just-
handle on it year after year when we go into the maintenance piece of this. 'Cause
Probably.
You don't
I would-
stop the first year. You're gonna continue to do it at least every year, every 2 years, at least the egg piece as well.
If
Yes,
it's
you guys could, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Go ahead.
You guys could certainly continue to do the nest and egg annually, zero cost to that. And then we would offer our services for additional roundups at your request. If you feel that's necessary every other year, every 2 years, that's entirely up to the city.
For the Lake Malibu, with the properties that are around there, how would the roundup work there? That's not Hudson.
We would probably need to at least do depredation or the egg piece in there.
You would, anywhere that you're gonna conduct either nest and egg or roundup activities would have to be with permission of whoever owns the property.
You know, we could contact the association, Malibu Lake Association, and see if they want to participate in this.
Yeah,
too.
I just was curious how that would
Yeah.
work with them.
And would we engage the residents on the North Hudson side, or?
Well, it's the
not?
association, I think, is all of them.
Okay,
Oh.
sure. Well, I have a question that I'd like to hear some numbers from our Public Works Director, because I know we had some conversations in the Public Works Committee. We've had numerous residents contact us, and I know you had a little information last year about what you saw happening with our population. How much time and energy did your staff put in to cleaning up after them?
Yeah, this last summer was obviously something that I haven't experienced here before, being here 8 years. Prior to the summer of 2025, you know, we had geese down there ranging anywhere from 15 to 20, manageable. You know, didn't really see a lot of the scat as we did last summer. For whatever reason, if it was the mild winters over the last 2 years, it exploded. We saw, you know, I had staff go down there and count. We had over 80 geese in our park system down in Lakefront Park. So obviously, a lot of the action, or a lot of the droppings happened around 4th of July. Went down there multiple days to clean off the trails. We were getting kind of blasted online with people going down and circling all the goose droppings on the trail. But it's just one of those things where instead of having our guys, whether it's painting crosswalks or, you know, working on traffic signals or street lights or filling potholes, they're down there cleaning up. And it's just one of those things where we're having to take away from other things and making that a priority. So, you know, that was a good 2-3 week stretch where we were having to deal with that. And then it came to a point where it got later in the season that people in the parks weren't as abundant, so we weren't getting as many complaints and phone calls, but I mean, they were still there, obviously. And then speaking to what the mayor was talking about earlier, it's like we're seeing on average anywhere from 3 to 4 week closure of our beach, you know, mid to late July through mid-August now. That's kind of commonplace, and I think it's contributing to the factor of the high E. coli counts in the North Bay. So, no.
But you're seeing probably a 4-fold increase
Yeah.
in the population.
Yeah, like I said, it's just the
We
amount.
do need to take action.
It was
I
just
just think we
boom,
do.
all of a sudden, so.
Yep.
You know, Seth, I don't know if you have information on this, but as I recall, this is not unprecedented here, what we're doing in Hudson. We had a goose
No,
population.
by no means.
I'm talking about here in Hudson.
Pardon?
I'm talking about here in Hudson. We had a
We've
goose.
never done anything specifically as far as goose work in Hudson, but this occurs throughout the state.
But we had a resident goose population here.
Early 2000s, it was more of a domestic goose population.
Yeah.
That we
Yeah.
had to round up.
Yeah, that were rounded up. So this is.
Okay. I guess I wasn't aware of that we worked
Yeah.
in Hudson.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't be.
It wasn't
saying that.
I don't think it was Canada goose. It was more of a domestic geese population.
Sure.
I wanted to comment on, excuse me, go, would you like to go?
Before Mike
Yeah,
sits down, I
Mike?
have one more question for Mike. And then I'll turn it back to you. Mike, you had mentioned that you thought the geese contributed to the eagle eye problem and closing
Yeah.
the river down. Are there other big contributors? Is it the largest contribution, would you think, to the reason why we're having to close it down, or?
I mean, it is a factor. You know, like we were stating, the waterfowl population along that stretch of the river in the North Bay, migrant birds that are staying here throughout the entire winter months, whether that's swans and it attracts the other birds. I think that's one of the major contributors, just like you said, you kind of heard how much waste they have. Now you got 200 birds sitting in North Bay for 3-4 months. I mean, that's a lot of poop, and so, as far as like our contributing factors, we have our TSS and our total phosphorus through our store, MS4 permit. We're out there sweeping, we're doing everything. We're vacuuming sumps. We're getting everything off our streets. But like I said, it's the excrement we're seeing those high counts.
Primary. Thank you.
The point I wanted to discuss, and I am in favor of moving forward with this, it is a public health issue. It's a fun and enjoy the outdoors, our riverfront issue, but certainly the public health issue is a big concern. To me, we've had quite a spike in the population. I wonder, do we think that our local food banks would want and could they find individuals that would choose to take home a goose? Is it worth spending the money to have them tested? And do we have a meat locker that's willing to process them for us? What is that going to cost? I do think we should look into that before we commit to saving that as consumable animal meat.
Okay, Seth, do you know?
I think that we could probably assist you guys with finding a processor that would be willing to butcher them. We work with processors throughout the state for the deer donation program. We certainly have a processor that we use on the east side of my district that does this routinely. And so if we couldn't come up with anything else closer as far as a butcher shop that was willing to work with you guys through this process, I know that we could send stuff over to the eastern part of the district and then just shuttle it right back over to Hudson.
Can that be brought over to the Twin Cities?
I would have to check into that if that can cross state
I
lines.
think they do over there. I'm pretty sure they do over there.
And Seth, do you find that the typical food bank or food shelf, for one, they'd have to have freezer space to have the geese until there was that client that wanted to take it? Do you find that that's a pretty desired item? Are they, do they end up in someone's hands that uses it and eats it for their family?
I guess I can't speak to that with any specificity, but I know that the geese that we've had butchered and donated pantries in the past, they've all been consumed.
Okay. Thank you.
If it's not donated, do they still need to be tested?
No, they do not. If they're not going to be donated, if they're going to be landfilled, or if we can put them with a captive carnivore facility, they do not need to be tested.
Thank you.
I wish we could send them back to Canada, where they came from, right? No, I think we do. Obviously, the beach is one of our jewels of our lakefront, right? And so I think that this is a good process to do. We've seen them down there, and again, as part of the parks, even if you're not swimming down there, it still ruins your experience down there. I do think that I'm all for kind of seeing what our options are and getting a little bit more aggressive. I see it much like fighting buckthorn, if anyone's ever done that. You're never going to rid yourself of the problem, but you can't just throw something at it one year and say, there, I did all I can. So this is going to be an ongoing commitment. But I wonder if we would look at a couple things, and again, this is getting a little not off track, but different subject, is that the feeding the birds part of it, whether it be the ducks or the cute geese or whatever. I know we have some signage, but somehow we need to get it out. That is not to put blame on the citizens of Hudson or the visitors, but I see that all the time. People feeding the ducks and the geese, and I don't want to be the Grinch and say, I know you're having fun with your kids, but stop doing that. And the other thing too is, and I think you and I might have talked about this a couple of years ago. We do have a leash law. Your dog has to be on a leash. And maybe back in the day, there was more people running their dogs down by the river, down the riprap, whatever, and maybe that was helping the geese go about their way. But, maybe we could examine that. Obviously, I'm not for any kind of animal cruelty, but if we did have dogs or people feeling comfortable running their dogs kind of, north of the beach a little bit, or to kind of stir that up. Because the geese they can just kind of, right now, they got the whole place themselves. They're doing whatever they want, so.
Yeah, just one thing on the ordinance. So, chapter 99, section 6, feeding of wildlife. So this is kind of a conundrum that we currently have. So it states there shall be no feeding of ducks, geese, gulls, or any other wild, non-domesticated animals within the city limits. Okay? This section shall not prohibit the feeding of trumpeter swans. So, per the ordinance, people can still feed trumpeter swans. Now, if you're a goose, you don't know if you're a trumpeter swan or a goose. So people go down and feed the swans, which is also food for the geese. So that is one thing that we may want to look at addressing in the future if, we move forward. with the
Any
program.
idea when that ordinance went into effect, Mike?
2015, 2010, there's various additions and
Was the
subtractions.
Swan?
Yeah, it doesn't say specifically when that
okay.
went in. No.
I mean, clearly we have an issue, and I think you really understated the number of swans that are up there. I've seen, I'd say anywhere between 300-400
There's a lot.
in the wintertime, and hang
Swans
out
or
there.
geese?
Swans,
300 to 400 out there?
yeah.
White geese, or white swans?
Trumpeter swans.
Wow,
Yep.
they've blown up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go out there at night in particular, I mean, it's one thing, they move around during the day, but if you go out there at night in the dead of winter, when it's, 10, 15 below or more, maybe not even that cold, they all congregate there where the water is still coming in from the willow on the secondary
Right.
dam. And they hang out there all winter. And they, so they're concentrated at that point in time when it's cold because there's just a small area of open water. They move around during the day. They're up in the willow and out in the channel. But at night, that's where they're at. And I highly recommend people go watch them, listen to them, because they are unbelievable.
I think this is an opportunity for education though too, where we maybe put more information out besides a sign that says, please don't feed the geese, or the ducks. Use that as an opportunity to educate of why we're doing this.
Right.
Well,
Beach closures and things.
I agree, and we need to have signage like everywhere. They need to be on the islands, and I gotta say, I'm guilty of this too with the kids and grandkids. It's cute to feed the ducks and the little babies coming around.
I was talking about you.
The same ones, yeah, I know. The same ones come back every year until they don't. But yeah, it's a problem, and people don't understand the consequences of this. So I think that the ordinance probably needs to be changed, and we need to have signage throughout the parks, and we probably need signage out on the river, on the dike.
You better increase the public works signage, because they'll disappear out on the island.
Yeah, I know.
And enforcement?
Oh, they don't have a boat.
There you
That
go.
boat.
Well, the fire department.
Spray the geese, I guess.
I mean, if we wrote a few tickets, people would probably say, oh, you're not supposed to feed the geese, so.
Yeah.
So you're looking for a motion?
Yeah, I think we might need a series of motions here.
I think if you follow that recommended action and use that as your motion basis, it'd probably be a good start.
Okay.
I don't
So
remember what
moved.
the name of the places.
So it'd be to move to, let's see,
I can
I
read
move
out.
to.
Move to approve
move to
staff to
approve-
submit. Go ahead, you were gonna,
Move to approve the Canadian goose nest and egg depredation permit and migratory bird depredation permit, in addition to contracting with USFWS for their services. Not
Second.
to exceed 10,000.
Ooh, yes. I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Now, is there, And Mike, you may want to come back up. Is there any action you want to take on an ordinance here to, as far as the feeding? Do we need to, is there?
We should bring the ordinance back, I think, at that point, because it's not an agenda
Yeah,
item, but yes, whatever is the recommendation.
Okay, we do that?
Yep.
I was just thinking because
I'll make
it's on the agenda, we could do that.
This was for Canadian geese, I suppose. I would turn to,
Get posted.
I
We
would
can
turn to
wait. We can
our
wait.
attorney for that, but,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to wait, that's fine. Otherwise, hey, that's fine to do tonight as well. So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, why don't we hold off until the next meeting so that we get language drafted for it and we don't have to work through it here tonight? All right, thanks, Mike.
Okay. Good.
Let's see.
We're in new business now.
Yeah, we are, but I was just thinking, and I apologize, because I had thought about trying to do something about this earlier, but we've got department head meetings that are gonna be coming up pretty late here in the agenda. And I was just wondering if we should just allow the staff to head out if they want, and we can do the department head meetings some other time. Does that make sense? Unless, of course, anybody that would like to stick around, we'll accommodate that report later on when they come up.
I just don't know, yeah, you don't want to leave the police, I mean, this is going to be our first time to hear from our assistant chief,
Oh,
or lieutenant.
oh, yeah, you're gonna be doing the,
Oh, he's probably giving me a scornful look now.
and David Gray, I think, is also,
Maybe we-
what do you point?
Item K,
Yep.
there's a presentation for Locust Street. I don't know if you want to
Oh, Aaron?
get that.
Oh, we can put that up right away, yeah, okay. Sure, okay, we can do that. And I think David's gonna have to, I think that's our annual report, we need to have that done too. All right, so, let's do that. Everybody okay with moving item K up?
Yes.
Okay. So item K, 2027 Locust Street Reconstruction Preliminary Design Report Presentation and Discussion and Possible Action for One-Way Layout Approval.
Right, let me just get my computer hooked up.
Yeah, do we have to approve Kyle to speak in there?
Yeah, so I can just intro the topic.
Oh, good.
Give me a minute.
Okay,
Second tree
why
planting,
don't we do that?
if you wanted to, you can bring it up.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. And we're gonna try doing that.
We're working towards it for sure.
Okay, so that seems to be working. All right, so this item, we have been working on the Locust Street preliminary design over this last year from first to third, so reconstructing Locust Street, and have worked with a consultant, ISG, on the public engagement and this preliminary design. So they are gonna, I have Claire here from ISG and we have Kyle on Zoom. They're gonna kind of both be part of the presentation here and just present what they've been doing over the last year. And then at the end, we're gonna look to approve a concept as well to move forward in final design. So
I will say that I am unable to see the screen if you're sharing anything right now.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's being shared through, you'd have to log into Hudson, or the River Channel, to be able to see what she's broadcasting.
Oh, so you can't see it through the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, it won't be able to see it through the Zoom meeting, because you're broadcasting on the River Channel, and that's broadcasting, or he's on Zoom.
Okay. Do you have the presentation as well, Kyle, up on your screen?
I do.
So maybe Claire can do her half, and then when it comes to when you are gonna take over, maybe you just share your screen then.
Yep, that sounds great.
Okay. Go with that. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for bumping us up on the agenda. My name is Claire Roth. I'm a planner with ISG, and we have on the line Kyle Hannigan. He's a landscape architect with ISG. We've been working on the project. I also want to note that Jake Guzik, the civil engineer on the project, who's played a large role, was not able to make it tonight, so Kyle and I are filling in his absence. What we're going to be running through tonight as our presentation is the actual report that was developed. So I'm going to be giving an overview of the process and running through the community engagement. I'll then turn it over to Kyle to run through existing conditions for the street and run through the concepts that were developed, as well as the connection into Lakefront Park. And then we'll finish up with traffic, costs, and our recommended option. Just for a quick overview of the process, as Aaron mentioned, looking at reconstruction of Locust Street between 1st and 3rd. Also decided to include a connection into Lakefront Park on the west end there. We started the process about 1 year ago, in February of 2025. That was when we began looking at the street, developing concepts. At the same time, we also developed an online survey. The purpose of that survey was to gauge current street usage and redevelopment priorities from the public. Throughout that process, we developed 3 concepts which were shared at a public open house and then refined at an ad hoc committee meeting in September. From there, we continued to refine the concepts and then develop a second online survey in which 2 concepts were shared with the community to vote on their preferred option between a 2-way and a 1-way street. And then from there, we finalized the concepts and are here tonight. The first community survey ran from March to June of last year and received about 110 responses. As mentioned, the purpose of that survey was to gauge current street usage and priorities. As you can see from the results here, most of the respondents were City of Hudson residents who used the street weekly, typically through a personal vehicle or by walking along it for leisure or parking along it. They also typically were traveling to downtown businesses such as retail shops or restaurants or Lakefront Park. The level of satisfaction with Locust Street, as you can see, varied, but a few things we saw as requested to be added or considered were increased parking solutions and interest in downtown character preservation and beautification. The main priorities as uncovered from that first survey were pedestrian and safety improvements. About 37% of people ranked that as their top priority, and vehicle parking, also a high priority. About 36% of people ranked that as their #1 priority. After closing the survey, we then refined a series of 3 concepts which were presented at a public open house. That was in May. Despite being heavily promoted with mailers and other promotions, it was a very low attended event. Not ideal, but with that, we saw that the results were that the second concept, which proposes 1-way travel lane, received the most votes. From there, we continued to refine the concepts with input from the community and staff. We had an ad hoc committee meeting in September with various stakeholders of the street just to discuss the process. We shared 3 concepts, the first one was a 2-way travel, the second one was the 1-way travel, and then a third concept was 2-way travel with parallel parking. At that meeting, we decided to remove that third concept because it decreased the number of parking stalls. Overall, that second concept, the 1-way, received the most support with the ad hoc committee. We then went through the process of continuing to refine those 2 concepts, the 2-way travel and the 1-way travel, and then shared that in an online community survey, which ran from December of this past year through January. In that, we received 128 responses. The goal of that survey was to share those 2 concepts with the community and allow them to vote on that and share any thoughts, questions, or concerns. Again, you can see here that most respondents were a City of Hudson resident. 30% of the respondents favored the 2-way concept and 70% favored the 1-way concept.
and asking why people preferred specific concepts. People that preferred the one-way concept, which is the maintaining two-way travel, favored that because they were most comfortable, with that existing pattern, or cited concerns of confusion. Those were some of the main comments we had heard with why people chose the two-way concept. People that preferred the one-way concept chose it because of strong feelings of pedestrian safety and comfort, perceived fewer conflict points with vehicles, safer crossing conditions. Also, a large cited reason was for the ability to have wider sidewalks, which would lead to more public realm improvements and opportunities for beautification. I'm now going to turn it over to Kyle to start talking about the existing conditions of Locust Street.
Okay, so Kyle, if you just want to share your screen now.
All right, do you guys have the screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
No.
Wait, well, sorry.
Oh, is mine
I
on?
could see, I could hear you.
Mine on.
Linda.
I do, just me.
Yeah, I think you need to request the sharing, and I don't see it pop up yet. Nope, there we go, started sharing.
Oh, no. Okay,
There you go, you got it.
perfect. All righty. So as Claire alluded to, we've been looking at Locust Street. So on this plan and maps, you see 2nd Street in the middle here, with 3rd on the eastern end and 1st bisecting on the western end. As you know, existing conditions on 1st. On the western block, we have 19 existing stalls, which include both parallel and angled parking, with an existing 30 stalls on the eastern block, again with a combination of parallel and angled parking. Existing conditions are improved traffic calming bump outs at 2nd Street and Locust that were done with improvements on there. And then two-way travel east-west in that space. There are no significant trees or plantings along this existing corridor, and existing sidewalk structure is fairly narrow, as you can see in the section here, generally from 8.5 feet on the widest section, 7 feet on the other side of the street, with 13-foot traffic lanes, 17.5-foot parking, angled parking lanes, and 9-foot parallel parking lanes. There's also minimal kind of cohesive design in terms of elements of lighting and other kind of pedestrian to give the site overall kind of character and cohesiveness. And then there's also some related concerns to roadway and site drainage in the area. So with us looking at that, just some images of existing conditions, which I'm sure you are all aware of. As Claire alluded to, we did initially do 3 concepts. This 3rd concept was eliminated just due to the reduction in the amount of parking, as we did eliminate the idea of having parallel parking or angled parking stalls and move to all parallel, but that was reduced to retain concept 1 and concept 2. Concept 1 retained the two-way travel, and what we look to do for that is create more of a cohesive design connection between the entire street. So utilizing the bump outs that had already been instituted on 2nd, we had included those additional bump outs to on 3rd Street as well as 1st. This would actually be a raised intersection, tabled intersection at 2nd Street to enhance the pedestrian movement between 1st and Lakefront Park. Overall lane widths on this, we did reduce and looked at lane reductions from that 13-foot travel to 10-foot to promote shorter pedestrian crossings. That also generates slower traffic with the smaller lane widths to increase pedestrian safety. And then we look to integrate some additional planting beds and that there. Concept 1 did allow for 21 proposed stalls on the west block, 33 proposed stalls on the east block, for a total of 5 more stalls than what's there currently. with some slight sidewalk increases to about 10 feet on either side to allow for greater pedestrian movement and so forth. Some related precedent imagery for that. And then concept 2 looked at the introduction of a one-way. So stemming off of 2nd Street, heading west on Locust, that would be designated one-way heading west. And then stemming off of 2nd Street, heading towards 3rd would be your secondary one-way direction there. Again, similar to concept 2, we are introducing bump outs at every single intersection in the area to, again, promote kind of cohesiveness across the site, but also enhance pedestrian movement, give signals to slow traffic in the area, and then with a tabled intersection at Lakefront Park on that space. Overall parking for this concept was 24 proposed stalls along the western block, 33 proposed stalls along the eastern, so a total of 8 additional as what's there currently. So concept 1 provided 5 additional. This provides 8 additional, while still maintaining on both 1 and 2 the combination of parallel parking and angled stalls. The one-way traffic here promotes also the opportunity to increase the amount of street trees within this space on the southern end of the block to allow for more planted space, more screening, and the opportunity for more pedestrian interaction in terms of site amenities like seating, just restaurants, and other elements. As part of this, we did note the opportunity to see for enhancement along Lakefront Park, the entryway. So with the amphitheater here and the roadway redesign, we noticed that there was opportunity to enhance Lakefront Park at this point in time as a money-saving opportunity if we're going to be looking at the overall flow of the street and adding a tabled intersection, doing something to enhance the pedestrian presence and view shed into the park and flow from Locust into Lakefront Park was deemed an opportunity that could be taken advantage of. So we looked at, again, the tabletop intersection to increase pedestrian flow, slow traffic at this intersection for pedestrian movement, with the integration of potential signage at the front facing street, just notifying Lakefront Park, a gathering area with potential for added benches and other elements within the space to really kind of set Lakefront Park and join that with the rest of Locust and the rest of downtown. So with that, Claire, I can pass it back to you.
Sorry, I'll go back to sharing my screen. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, I think that's working. Yeah. Okay.
All right, just wrapping it up here. We did complete a traffic study for the project. The full study is in the appendix of the report, so we're just going to give a brief summary here of the findings. The traffic study assessed both the concept 1, which was the two-way traffic, and then concept 2, which is the one-way traffic proposal. Overall, the traffic study concluded that the one-way had greater long-term benefits for walkability and safety when paired with appropriate signage, pavement markings, and traffic calming measures. In addition, traffic modeling did show little impacts or delay of level of service at nearby intersections. Signalized intersections would accommodate the impacts of any traffic redistribution that might occur from the one-way. It also is suggested to pilot conversion to the one-way with temporary cones and signs before the full construction, just so people can test it out and see how that is received. For cost, we did develop preliminary cost estimates for both of the concepts and the lakefront park entryway. I do want to note that the cost difference between the two-way and the one-way is minimal. The two-way currently is estimated at approximately $1.8 million, whereas the one-way is approximately nearly $1.9 million. So overall, we would allude that this is not a budget decision, but really want to focus on how the street should look and function long-term, since the difference is negligible. In addition, most of the project's costs do come from the reconstruction itself. So the core infrastructure, concrete pavement, curb and gutter, sidewalks, lighting and removals, those are things that will need to be replaced regardless of which of the two concepts is chosen. Since the city is already rebuilding the street, the concept choice just determines how the rebuilt space is going to operate over the next 40 to 50 years. And in summary, we do recommend concept 2, the conversion to the one-way, due to large community and stakeholder support, in addition to perceived benefits of pedestrian safety and downtown experience, traffic operations and safety, and parking and streetscape benefits. So that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
All right, yeah, let's have some discussion if there's any questions.
Just, I want to make sure that it's clear that you're asking, as part of this, is a proposal to make the one-way conversion on both those streets,
yes.
both parts of Locust.
Yep.
Just so that everybody understands that's what's being asked in this as well.
Is the lakefront park entry, it looks like it's separate. Is that part of the Locust Street development, or I'm wondering why it's separate and not with each of?
Like a separate cost estimate?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, so.
Yeah, so I
would
would say the entry is, and the intersection at First is the same for each concept. I think we wanted to see the cost estimate kind of additional, just, for transparency, basically. So yes, the lakefront park, the main concern we had was safety of vehicles driving into the park. And so we took that opportunity to kind of use, instead of just putting up bollards or, putting up concrete J barriers, doing something that can be a nice entry into the park. And so both concepts can accommodate basically the same lakefront park entry.
At the ad hoc meeting, we talked about it. It is part of the whole design, but
Yeah, that's what I was going to put on things, or.
we also talked with the FIP Center. I'm not committing them to anything, that it would be a good thing to have something that makes it pop on that entrance, artwork or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all part of that conversation. Am I right, Sarah?
That's what I remember as well.
So if we're approving this, you're approving this with that. It's not two separate things we have to approve, correct?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah, and right now we're looking to approve kind of just high level. We're good with the one way. We're going to move forward into final design. And, there will be, another opportunity to, approve the actual design of the project. This is just kind of high level.
Okay.
So yeah, this won't be the only time you're seeing this until it goes to construction. So this is really to just get the ball rolling and dive into engineering, and there'll definitely be more details to come.
Yeah. And I appreciate all the work you guys put into it, and the ad hoc committee, et cetera, and getting good feedback. And the idea that what was wanted was safer walking, more trees, better feel down there, and I think the one-way kind of is kind of the only way that satisfies that. So I'm okay with that. Just one quick question. The very last advice you gave us was suggesting we kind of force the one-way early, set up, sawhorses or whatever to start doing that. Is that something that we plan on doing? And if we experience issues from that, I mean, I don't want this going too far down the drawing board and then we spend a week realizing that, whoa, that doesn't really work. How do we solve for that?
I think we've talked about it more internally, just with Public Works, and there would be a lot to do to make the conversion. I think that it's something that's there, I guess, more as if the council felt like it was needed. So we feel comfortable with it from a safety standpoint. We wanted to present that there could be opportunities to do that, to test it out. But right now, I guess internally, we're not leaning towards that direction. Just it would be money, we'd have to spend more money. That not all of it would be wasted, but we would be spending a little bit of money to convert it. Right. And like you said, we wouldn't want it to kind of blow up in our faces.
Yeah. Right.
Because it wouldn't be the permanent, we wouldn't be able to do the reconstruction. And so it would be a lot different doing the one-way, I feel like, when it's fully reconstructed versus we're just going to try to stripe it, try to add delineators. It might add more confusion, and it might not actually give an accurate depiction of what it will feel like in the end. But it is something we could go with. But right now, we're not looking to do it.
And like we talked about at Public Works, that there were a few comments. When someone asks a comment, they have to give it a comment, right?
Yeah.
The idea, it might be confusing because it's two-way right now, but if we one day magically we wake up and that's a one-way, well, that's the law. That's going to now be a one-way street. So if you struggle with it for a week or two, maybe, but it's so that's kind of why I agree with you that we could set it up and kind of have a fake street for a couple of weeks, but this is the direction we're headed, and so maybe we don't need that fantasy land of driving.
Yeah.
I'll move to approve preferred concept 2 to forward for final design.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Application for reserve Class B beer, Class B liquor license, 517 2nd Street, Kelly's Pub, 7 Grill. Just hang on one second. I don't know that we need any comment at this point. Anybody have any questions on this? Does everybody know what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
New business owner.
Thanks for being part of the process.
Welcome. There you go. Great.
All right, we are gonna bump up the
Bonding.
item H. We're gonna put up to accommodate Sean here. I think it's Sean, or are we accommodating Sam? Item H, Resolution 08-26, providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes, Series 2026A, of the City of Hudson, Wisconsin. Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I've got a brief presentation to go over with you for the finance plan for the 2026 and 2027 capital projects. So as we move through the material, council members, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me with those as we go through. We did meet with finance earlier this evening. To start with, and at finance, there was a couple discussions about some final budget amounts for the 26 and 27 capital projects. Those numbers have been incorporated along with the original capital improvement plan for 26 and 27, and we're expecting an issue for a project amount of just under $8,010,000 for those 2 years worth of capital projects. Just as a quick reminder to the council, You'll recall last year we had a large financing for the Public Works building and for the police station. Typically and historically, Hudson has issued your 2-year CIP on odd number years. But last year we didn't do that. We just did the financing for 2025 and for those 2 large legacy projects. And the concept was, instead of doing 25 and 26 with that financing, that would have pushed us over 10 million in tax exempt debt issued in a calendar year, we would switch and now start using the even years. And again, that approach was, if we stay at or below 10 million in a calendar year, it helps us with interest rates. We can get somewhat lower interest rates. So we always try to do that when we can, and that was the concept and the somewhat of change that's brought us to today's plan. So with that project amount for the 2 years, the next slide is a proposed repayment schedule over the next 20 years for that list of capital projects. And we've used interest rates that are about 0.5% above the current market condition, with a blended interest rate for the entire issue of approximately 4.15%. That would result in annual payments beginning with the first payment being due in 2027 of around $615,000 to $620,000 in principal and interest payments to pay that issue back over 20 years. Typically with a 20-year issue, when we've done those issues for the city in the past, we do put in a prepayment date. The prepayment date is expected to be year 8 of 20. So for the first 8 years, the city would not be able to make prepayments on this particular issue, but starting in year 8 through year 20, if lower interest rates are available and we wanted to refinance, or if we had excess funding available, we could start making prepayments at that point. Now, when we do a new issue, we've typically talked with the council about the impact on the borrowing capacity for the city, and then also on the levy. This first slide looks at the impact on the borrowing capacity, and as council will remember, the state does limit the city's use of general obligation debt to 5% of the equalized value of the entire city. The dark orange line at the top of the chart is the limit for Hudson, so a little bit under 180 million. And then on the bottom of the page, in the lighter orange and the green, is the existing debt principal amount outstanding. That's in the lighter orange. And then in the green is the impact of adding the new proposed approximately $8 million issue. So we're getting up close to about 60 million in general obligation debt outstanding. So we're in the range of about 1/3 of what the total amount allowed under state law. Now, secondly, and probably more importantly, this next slide looks at the impact on the annual budget for repayment of debt service for the city. The lighter blue color on the bottom, the larger bars, are the existing principal and interest payments due on existing debt that the city has approved in the past. So this is for all the projects for debt issues done in 2025 and earlier that remain outstanding. And you see that the trend is fairly level over the next few years, but then gradually dropping down. On top of that, we've added the, aqua blue to green blue color bar on top of the lighter blue colored, almost gray colored bars. That would be the impact of the proposed new approximately $8 million issue. And if you look at the bullet points at the bottom of the page, we're expecting the levy for principal and interest on debt payments for the city to go from about 4.34 million, which is in the current year 2026, to about 4.81 million for next year's payment. The impact on a $450,000 property in the city would be about $65, and this is net of any other variables, so that this is, the city's not growing at all, it's just kind of staying status quo in terms of the total value of the city. So hopefully that's a somewhat conservative estimate, but this is also only debt. This isn't looking at any of the other expenditures that the city considers in each of your budget. And the next slide will get into a couple years worth of potential additional debt in the future and the impact of that. But before moving on to that, is there any questions on the council? So this would really be a good stop point, because this is the impact of just this issue on the existing situation for debt for the city. Okay. So as we typically do when we talk with the council and also with the finance committee, we did start some projections looking forward as well. And the committee and the mayor had asked for us to do some additional projections, and we'll have that for you coming up at probably either your second meeting this month or into April, or it'll be your April meeting. Yeah, it'll be your April meeting. And so what we've done at this point, though, we've added to the previous chart that I just reviewed 2 additional $8 million debt issues done in 2028 and 2030. And what we're seeing with that trend of doing $8 million every other year for capital projects and 100% of it being debt that needs to be repaid with the city's levy is that debt levy would grow from where it is now, about 4.34 million, up to about 5.6 million for debt payments due in 2031. And that's the peak point with the green bars. The mayor had asked the question, if we continued to do, say, 8 million, where do we see a chart like this going into the future? And that's where we'll do some additional work. I think the mayor, and I won't speak for you, Mayor, but what the mayor was kind of looking and searching for more discussion on was, is there a point where we might start seeing the city's debt level off somewhat going into the future rather than being on the incline? And we're going to do some more research on that. I'm hoping we see that in the mid to late 2030s, that we'll start to see that occurring as some of this old legacy debt for major infrastructure that you've had to do in recent years, as more and more of that has been paid back over time. So more to come on this, but we did want to give the council a projection on what this would look like going forward, should you still need to do about 8 million a year going into the future. And again, we've only done it through 2030, but we'll have additional information for you going out longer than that. On a pure levy standpoint, another chart that we put together to focus just in on that debt levy and the impact of going from the 4.3 million, you'll see that on the column debt levy, up to the 5.6 million under this hypothetical for the budget year 2031. What would the increase be? And the other part of this is a huge assumption, so just to make it clear, because we wanted to focus mostly this discussion on the debt, is your operating levy here is kept constant. And I know there'll be growth in that, but for now, just to highlight the debt impact, we wanted to hold that constant from 26 to 31. So if you go to the right side of the page, that's where you're seeing with each additional 8 million, you're starting to see about a 4% increase with each of those on the total levy. And then if you had operating levy increases that were occurring over that period of time, that increase up and above the debt increase would raise that percentage higher. Okay, if that makes sense to everybody. So more work to come on this material, and as you as council members have some time to think about this, if there's other things you want to see, please let us know, and we can take a look at that. Finally, timeline-wise, just so the council's up to speed, Today was the initial resolution that the Finance Committee looked at earlier, and you're asked to take action on this evening. From this point through April, we'll be getting all the material together related to putting the financing out for competitive bids. That includes updating the city's bond rating. I think as the council knows, you have an excellent AA2 rating, and we'll be working with Moody's and city staff on getting them the information to update the rating. This would all lead to a competitive sale the morning of May 4th, and then that evening we would come and present the results of that competitive sale. At that point, if you accept the winning bid at that meeting, a couple weeks from there, middle to late May would be the closing, and then that would be cash in hand for the city to pay for the 26, and then also invest money for the 2027 projects until you have those next year. So with that, I think hopefully we covered all the big picture questions, but if there's anything else that the council has or members of the Finance Committee from our earlier discussion, happy to open it up. But otherwise, Mayor, that would be that initial resolution for this evening's action item.
Anybody? Do we have a motion?
I've got a question, comment, because I think we were all part of the, or overheard the Finance Committee. So, so the final dollar amount is not exactly set yet for what we go out to bond? And that's where the discussion of some of the, the boat and the cameras and all that stuff. I mean, I want to make sure that we have our ducks in a row. At what point can that discussion happen without slowing him down?
The resolution, it says 8.2, and he just said, what, little above 8 million?
It's 8.2 is the initial resolution, 8.21 million, I believe. To the specific question, I think, as I understood from the committee, that's a not to exceed number approved. There would be discussions potentially in April, and for us, if by mid-April you were giving us feedback to maybe adjust the size downward, we certainly could do that and make it work. We could probably even go a little later than that, but we don't want to get too close to that May 4th date with making changes.
And my thought on that too is, it's a 20-year loan that we're taking out, if you will. And some of these products we talked about, I know, again, I'll throw the camera at this each time. We talked about a 10-year subscription that we're going to pay for 20 years. So that's like, I think, Randy, you mentioned that. The borrowing, it's not just, oh, great, we have some extra money left over. That's expensive money. Mm-hmm. So as tight as we can get to that budget before we slow you down is what I want to do. And it sounds like this resolution will do that, so.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 8-26.
Second.
Motion second to adopt. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll see you in May.
Sounds
if not
good.
sooner.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Good job.
Let's do some easy ones.
Nice. Amendment to Municipal Code Chapters 225, smoke shops, and Chapter 255, zoning, as well as table of permitted uses.
So with this ordinance, all we did is add a line is to add, make sure they get a background check. That was not added in the ordinance amendment earlier last year. So we just added that line to make sure we get a background check on the smoke shop applicant.
Anybody?
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion is second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brook?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes. Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Move to approve ordinance 4-26.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve preliminary resolution 05-26 declaring intent to exercise special assessments for the 2026 sidewalk and curb replacement project.
All right, so this one, I handed out a map, so you guys have the project areas for a few of the other issues. And I have highlighted in yellow, hopefully you can see it, kind of the preliminary sidewalk areas. But this issue sheet is just approving the preliminary resolution to start the special assessment process. But that's just showing the tentative project areas.
Anybody?
Could you comment on how you select?
Yeah, so this it kind of starts with people since the last project call and have questions or concerns about their sidewalk or curb in front of their property. So we kind of start adding those to a list and start adding those to a project. Then we'll maybe look for some areas in that neighborhood. So that's kind of how the Heritage Greens neighborhood came about. A few complaints, and then we kind of just to have a project in a similar area, kind of look for other tripping hazards and things for sidewalk. And then we did have a sidewalk assessment done a few years ago by SEH, so we have a whole evaluation of all the sidewalk in the city for tripping hazards and just different deficiencies, so we look to that. The downtown has a lot of them. A lot of sidewalk is due to trees in the boulevard, so we just try to check off the worst of the worst and fit it within our budget.
Thank you.
Anybody?
I move to approve resolution. This doesn't have to be suspended, does it?
Resolution.
No. I move to approve resolution 05-26, declaring the intent to have special assessments for the 2026 sidewalk and curb replacement project.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve preliminary resolution 06-26 declaring intent to exercise special assessments for the 2026 alley improvements.
So similar item, just applying the special assessments to our alley project this year.
Move to approve preliminary resolution 06-26.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve preliminary resolution 07-26 declaring intent to exercise special assessments for the 2026 street and trail rehabilitation project.
So same item, so just applying special assessments to our pavement reclamation and trail rehabilitation project. So this will be for the Hazel Crest, Hazel Court, 17th and Laurel Avenue. So mostly the special assessments will just apply to spot curb and gutter replacement. And the trail, some sidewalk just along the driveways of those commercial properties along Crestview.
I'll move to approve resolution 07-26.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Approve plans and authorize advertisement for bids for the 2026 mill and overlay project.
So this Bolton and Mink, we hired them to put the plans together for our mill and overlay project. So this issue sheet is looking to approve the plans to go out for bidding. And we would do an online bid opening April 9th and look to hopefully approve for construction on April 20th. And our engineering estimate is, with construction engineering, is $925,000, and we funded about $1.1 million along with some storm sewer utility funds for the project. And the mill and overlay areas can be seen on your handout, but they are mostly the Burl Oak Curve neighborhood over by the middle school, and Hudson Meadows kind of on the southeast side of town.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Since we're rearranging the agenda, do you want to do item J?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do that. Approve plans and authorize advertisement for bids for the 2026 street and trail rehabilitation program or project.
So similar thing, we just put it in a different bid package to do the pavement reclamation and trail rehab. Again, the plan sheets are attached. We would look to do the same bidding schedule, and the estimates were within what we have preliminary put in the funding with the CIP.
I do have a question for you about that. Could you comment on any plans to accommodate pedestrian and bike traffic along Laurel?
Yeah.
I know we just recently had work done on the western end of Laurel by Williams Park, down past 11th, west of 11th Street. And that might be a little bit wider street there, I'm not sure. But are we able to provide a similar sort of, I know it's not a true walkway, but a painted area to provide protection, a narrower traffic pattern? What do you have in mind?
Yeah, we were thinking we would just add the center line striping and the fog line striping to continue what we did do on the project a few years ago. So from kind of you come up the hill and go all the way to 11th, we added the striping with that project, kind of twofold to help with the pedestrian, the lack of sidewalks in the area. So the stripe is not designated as sidewalk, but it's, I think helps walkers feel a little more safe. And then we thought we would just continue that same striping pattern all the way to 17th.
Down to 17th. Again, as we've mentioned before, this is a neighborhood that is close to an elementary school where a lot of students walk to EP Rock. So I'm happy to see any accommodation, as humble as it may be, with a painted line. I do think the painted line also helps define the roadway, so that drivers, drive here rather than wander. It's wide enough that there could be some wandering.
Yep.
And that way it gives a little bit more of a sense of here's where you drive, here's where you can walk or ride a bike. So I'm happy to hear that. And of course, that'll be striped after the project's done.
Yeah, it'll be included in the project.
Yes,
we'll
okay.
include it in the plans, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well then I would like to just move to approve plans and authorize advertisement for bids for the 2026 street and trail rehabilitation project.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Fire hall and city hall security system.
All right. Oh, Sam's coming up. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. I think a lot of people have heard it from the last meeting. It's just camera and security system for City Hall. We don't have one here in City Hall. The one that we have at the fire station is kind of a home system through Ring doorbell.
I'll note cost for the City Hall camera are $73,500 and the fire department are $107,000. That to be paid out of the 2026 A bond issuance.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Here for the next one too. Ordinance 3-26, amending the city's room tax rate from 3%.
Okay. I can begin the conversation on this. So during the 2026 budget process, we talked about room tax, and I was asked to bring back to the council a proposal showing what neighboring municipalities were paying, what the state municipalities were paying, and We brought that forward, and that data is within or in the packet that you have. You can see municipalities throughout the state. We are, if you look at this sheet, if anybody needs another copy, I've got extra copies that's in your packet here. I'll just send them that way. Here you go. Send them that way, and I'll send them the other way. Here you go. Okay, so there are 23 total municipal room tax districts, right, that have, because some municipalities combine with townships and that to create a full room tax type taxing jurisdiction, or a taxing district. If you look at I'd say 3.5% and less, we're in the bottom 20. That'd be 22 of the entire state. The most popular of the taxing amounts is right around 8% at 129 of those jurisdictions. There's 385 that had to record their information with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue for room tax as of December 31st, 2025. So this data is all from the DOR. So you can, under today's agenda, you can move to any amount all the way up to 8%. We are currently at 3%. If you look at the neighboring jurisdictions, which is in your packet, we had a balance, I should say, average that's surrounding counties, all the jurisdictions in the surrounding counties, and all the jurisdictions in St. Croix County, an average of 5.78, so almost 6% by average. And that's taking into account St. Croix County and the neighboring counties. This is not taking into account what's taking place on the other side of the border over in Minnesota. So with that, the other numbers we have, created a, kind of take a look at what room rates are between here and Woodbury. So there are, I guess, direct competition with, and we know that for the metro area, we're with direct competition with Woodbury and Stillwater. I tried to do comparables based on the type of hotel, Holiday Inn Express, for instance, see what they get, what's being paid. It's really there's 4 caveats at the bottom there, and it really deals with those numbers change constantly depending upon how close you are, how many rooms are still available. They're constantly changing, and I know we do have one of the hotel managers in the audience here, and we also had I guess one among you, I guess. I won't point out any fingers, Randy. I won't point to you.
Not really, but go ahead.
Yes, but somebody else was here and involved with the hotel industry as well on the council. Now, when you look at what, you can mix those numbers however you'd like. It looks like on average, if you look further out, I tried to look as far out as you could to get away from the play of third-party brokers and the hotel adjustments and all that other stuff to try to fill their rooms. So if you look that far out in July of 2024, on average, Hudson charges more for rooms than Woodbury does, and also more than what you see in the Stillwater charged more for the one comparison I could find, which was American. However, the thing that's easier to compare, right, rather than room rates, is looking at the tax rates. Here in Hudson, our tax rate is 3% and 5.5% for the sales tax. If you look at Woodbury, you have 3% for their room tax and 8.88 for other taxes, including sales tax. All get added onto that bill. One thing that should be noted is the room tax for Woodbury of 3% go entirely to the city. And that is the maximum amount that that state allows. Okay? Whereas the maximum amount that the state of Wisconsin would allow us to go to is 8%. However, 70% of that 8% collected goes to a tourist entity, and in our case, that's the Chamber of Commerce. So the city would only retain 30% of that 3% as it sits right now, or 30% of the potential, whatever you go to. If you choose 6%, if you choose 5%, if you choose 8%, again, the city only retains 30% of that amount. So looking through, you can see Comfort Suites. Oakdale does not have a 3%. It's all state room tax, the metro tax, the transit tax, all that stuff's thrown in for Oakdale at 8.873% that you see there under the Comfort Suites. And then also there is Invergrove Heights at 3% for the American, 3% room tax, and 8.13 state tax and all this, the other pieces. I mean, it's really kind of difficult. You got to go almost by zip code to find out what the taxes are over there. So for their state and their other portions being part of the metro area. So there's a lot of caveats when you look at that particular thing, right? So let's see. Sam had produced a table that would show you for, they might have gone to the end there. I got extra copies of the hotel piece too. If anybody wants that, I can, if they want those, they can have that too. Okay, so Sam and I worked through some numbers on the room tax levy scenario. If that's this longer sheet that you have, okay. It shows our existing 3% in Hudson, 6% potential, and 8% potential, and it shows. Maybe Sam can explain this one too, but it shows the amounts as they change, and then we also have one that's comparing Woodbury with Hudson, New Richmond, and River Falls as it exists today. So go ahead, Sam, if you want to take those.
Yeah, ultimately, the first one that Brent talked about is comparing the different scenarios. I want to point out a couple of different items. First being that, as Brent noted, 70% of this does get remitted to the chamber and only 30% stays with the city. And the second being that hotel revenue stays flat along these items. So really the net effect to the hotel here is nothing. This is in addition to what they're charging. Moving on to the neighboring jurisdictions, Woodbury, as Brent had pointed out, they have that 3% and that goes completely to the municipality. It's not split with a tourism destination. And then the neighboring jurisdictions, we haphazardly picked New Richmond and River Falls because they seem to be the closest in Wisconsin, but also Woodbury noting there. And I guess I'd also note that going to a 6%, we still stay below the total tax levied in Woodbury. We would go up to 11.5%, so that would be 5.5% sales, and then a 6% room tax, where in Woodbury they have the 3% sales tax. They also have a 0.5% local sales tax option on top of their state and metro-wide taxes. With that, I guess I also... Brent, anything else?
No, and I did want to add, so I did have some conversations, and I know Deb Pittman's in the audience, and I know our Chamber of Commerce members and our Chamber of Commerce president? Go ahead, I don't know what it is. What's your title again? President? Okay, we'll go with it. All right, so is in the audience today as well, but I did have conversations with them, and I know the hotels had met earlier this year, is what I was told. They were proposing if we did make some sort of adjustment, they'd like to see a step increase over a period of years. as a step increase. So the options are seeking that out. I mean, I think they were talking about maybe 1% a year over a period of maybe 5 years to get to 8%, or 3 years to get to 6%. That would be a single percent per year, or the jump to 6% or 8%. So you've got a few options that you could look at. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer to doing this. I know the hotels would probably, one thing we should understand, the hotels would probably want to do this on a January 1st start date, I would imagine. There's nothing in the stats that's saying you can't start throughout the year, but you got to give them, if we're going to do it for the third and fourth quarter collection periods, we're at the end of the first quarter now, right? So as we get into April, then if you make a decision in April rather than today, then you're looking at just collecting in the fourth quarter of this year as you prepare. Now, I know they have people that probably have reserved rooms and that all the way into the summer, but that's kind of what you're looking at, that whole mix of items. And this is the first full discussion that we've had on all of the information that we've collected. And unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of the information until the Department of Revenue was able to bring that forward. We do want to make some sort of decision on this, as we are edging toward the room tax revenue discussion on expenses for all of the holiday decorations, hot air affair, the FIP center that we do give to, and all the other pieces that is on that list that we give taxing dollars to, room tax dollars to. So we're going to need to do that in the next meeting or so, possibly May. Possibly the very first meeting in May, we would need to address all of that. So we need to know what we're going to be spending going forward, or have the ability to spend going forward.
So I have a question, Brennan, maybe you can answer, maybe that's an easy one. Because we've had this discussion kind of months ago about looking into other sources. This kind of popped up as a source.
Yep.
And what I've heard is that there's not complete pushback on an increase, but it's how we approach that.
Mm-hmm.
And the adding, getting it to 6% or even 8% is it would shock the system, is kind of what I'm hearing. And since we do kind of partner with those businesses,
mm-hmm.
is it how much more clerical, or is it a pain? I guess that's layman's term. Is it a pain? If we do revisit this every year and we take steps to get there, I for one want to increase this, but I also don't want to unnecessarily put a burden. I know we'd be holding back over. It would take a number of years to kind of get us to where our better target is.
Mm-hmm.
But is it something we could revisit every year and do 2% this year and 2% next year and get to where we think we want to be, but take the load off of them? The term doubling the tax seems a little precarious to throw out there right now.
Sure. You can cut this however you'd like.
Okay.
I mean, at any point you can bring back and amend or create another ordinance, because it's part of our ordinances, our city ordinances. You would have to come back and do the ordinance again. We'd publish and move on.
Okay.
Yeah, but realize we're always like a quarter behind too.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
If I may, I'm not speaking for anybody, including my former colleague.
Yep.
In 30 years, I've never had a guest complain about the tax, regardless of what you label it.
Mm-hmm.
They complain about the rate. The rate won't change.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we'll increase it to cover the rest of the costs as we do, but nobody's going to complain, especially if you go like to Wisconsin Dells or you go to any resort. You're going to pay the tax, the sales tax, the resort fee, etc., and you're up to 50%. There's no way that a 3% increase would really hurt.
Okay.
It's just not. It's not. And I'm not speaking for Deb or anybody else in the business. They don't complain about it. We'll absorb it. Well, they'll absorb it a different way.
Yeah. Well, that was my initial feeling, because I think that I get that if we were saying a $200 room is now a $300 room, then you say, well, wait a second, there's maybe another city around here that I could stay for the night that's cheaper. But we are talking small amounts, and I think you're right. I think the burden, even though at the end of the day, it's what's on the bottom of your credit card. I get that by what you actually paid to stay in the hotel room. But I don't know if, I mean, that blame, like you mentioned, nobody's ever complained. You always complain the state or the city and say, oh, taxes, they keep going up. But that's not really against the individual business owner.
Right.
And so if it's communicated that way, then maybe this incremental is what you're saying is, it really doesn't get us there. We're still gonna raise taxes with a percentage over a course of the year. Your suggestion is pull the trigger now.
I would, because, if I had 60 rooms to sell and I have 2 left, you're gonna pay max rate. I don't care what tax on it is. And whoever needs a room is gonna do it.
And that wouldn't drive someone.
No.
You've never experienced someone down to the last $5 of a room rate to say, I'm gonna drive to the next city to find something $5 cheaper.
Some people do, some won't.
Okay.
But the next person that walks in, you can play a game.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it also
Thanks,
benefits our promoting our city with a larger, going there to, I mean, wonderful things going on now with the internet and all that advertisement to make Hudson your destination vacation. But there'll also be more in that fund to support the wonderful things that Hudson has to offer.
Yeah.
So I heard, Brent, you mention if we voted on this tonight, it could go into effect for the third quarter. But then I also heard you mention something about the hotels wanting us to start this on January 1. But I also heard you say, but it really is your choice to do what you want. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, it's clearly on you to decide how you want to do this. I've seen them start mid-year, I've seen them start at the end of the year. You could even make a motion if you wanted to create it, but have it delayed until the end of the year to start in 2027.
Troy?
My comments are also in support of the funding, what goes to the chamber and what excellent work. We just have an amazing marketing program that goes on through our local chamber and tourism bureaus. We're really fortunate how effective that is, and it will be more dollars for them to spend, as well as more dollars that our council, the mayor's direction, but the council approves to support other individual projects in the city, all with the goal of supporting tourism, bringing people to Hudson. So I am definitely in favor of it. I do just want to say one thing that I had someone comment to me about that I didn't really think through as well. I typically think of a purchase that I make, and then later I might think, oh, how much is the sales tax on it? Because I've already bought the item, I didn't think about it ahead of time. But this is a purchase that many people, it does affect the upfront price, so I do empathize with the property owners that are running our motel and hotel establishments, because most people, I don't know what the percentages are, but most people do book their rooms online, and so their purchase price reflects the local taxes. Am I correct with that?
Not all the time, depending on what third party you use.
But it can be that they see, the price of the hotel room does appear higher before they get there. I've stayed in major cities also where you look at the end, how did this get so expensive? I thought it was a $300 room and it's $380, and you see, oh, they got a 15% room tax, and you don't quite realize that ahead of time. But I think it can affect some people. Obviously, we want to be supportive of our local businesses. They do collect it. They're mandated to collect that tax and pass it on to us. And I do appreciate that. It does take some work on their part. I do think it's better to go double it, go to the jump of, go to 6% is what I would be in favor of. I'm flexible on the start date.
Yep. And again, your choices are between that amount and all the way up to 8, but 6% is a doubling, yes.
Sure.
I'll move we go to 6% by the end of the year, starting at the end of the year of 2027.
mean, effective like January 1,
That's what I'm trying to
2027?
get at,
Okay.
Was there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Okay, so January 1st, 2027 start date.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam.
Wait a minute.
Pardon me?
We're changing the ordinance.
Oh, you
Oh,
suspend.
yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Good catch.
Okay.
Anybody
Move to
wanna
suspend the
retro-
rules if I go back. up.
Second.
All right, motion and second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
The motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move for my previous motion
Got it.
that Sarah helped define.
You should still do that, though. Should go through that process.
Yeah, we are.
Vote again.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay, motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Good catch, Joyce. Municipal code update to building and housing chapters.
The once-a-year visit from David.
Once a year, yep. Try to stick to that if I can. Essentially, we're looking to update Chapter 106 and 140 of our municipal code to keep up with state rules and model ordinances. Essentially, it aligns our power and inspection authority to go along with our state statutes. James, jump in anytime if.
You're doing a great job.
All right. And then also some of the changes are related to the taller buildings we're building, so that our fire department have the ability to access those taller buildings, specifically buildings over 30 feet. Drew's going to need his ladder truck to be able to get set up in front of those taller buildings. Hence, that's why we're asking for 26 feet clearance in front of those buildings. And I think that's all I had, unless you have any questions.
I have a question. Do any of these changes affect any either current permits or proposed buildings out there, as far as you know, that massively change it, or just have to, are we just fine tuning?
We're essentially fine tuning a lot of those situations where we might need to inspect a property that doesn't have a permit. You know, if you have a permit, that gives us the authority to inspect the project or the property.
Okay.
This language is in scenarios where we might need to respond to a complaint. Then we have the authority or a process to follow in order to get that inspection.
Okay.
I have a question for you, David. Under section 106-6, residential building permits, you're adding the phrase including detached accessory structures. Could you describe what that refers to?
So the state uniform dwelling code applies to 1 and 2 family homes. And it was adopted in 1980. We're also adopting the UDC to apply to homes built before 1980, as well as accessory dwellings. So the state has a model ordinance, that essentially, without that ordinance, we don't have the authority to inspect accessory buildings.
And what, is it just a garage, what, a shed? I mean, I know a certain size shed doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's typically structures over 120 square feet.
Okay.
And then it would also apply to, a lot of times now we're building accessory dwellings and accessory buildings. So it allows us to inspect those as well.
Where, like a carriage house where there's living space.
Exactly.
Above it.
Anything else? Questions?
So what do we have, 3 ordinances we have to change, is that what?
It's like 126, 226, and 106, 140.
So, 2. One covering chapter 106 and then another.
So not that building construction and fire prevention ordinance and housing standard, but that moves to 022, or 2-26 and 1-26 is all you need?
Correct, yep.
So now we move to suspend the rules.
I'll second.
Motion is second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Wakefield.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Kennedy.
Yes.
Brooke.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to approve 2-26.
Do we do them together or no?
He's got him on here as one motion, if you want to do them together.
All right. This, it comes back, it's your fault.
That's fine. I'll take it.
2-26 and 1-26.
Second. Put my neck up for you there.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
So I'd be better at this stuff if I came more often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
So you all set to give your report?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. This is the 2025 year in review, building inspector's annual report. 2025 was kind of a down year, a slow year. We did about $48 million in construction and collected about $272,000 in permit revenue. Our residential sector, we added 16 new dwelling units over the entire year. 12 of those starts actually came in the fourth quarter of this year. One thing that kind of contributed to that was the opening of Canner Crossing. That's a new twin home development that Creative Homes has off of Stage Line Road. Commercially, we just did one new commercial building. That was Principal Preservation, located at 2409 Monetary Boulevard. Industrial, we started the St. Croix Valley Food Bank building on Jack Pro Drive. Institutionally, it was kind of good. It was a slow year because we had two projects this past summer that the contractors refer to as the Summer Slams at EP Rock and Hudson Middle School. I spent pretty close to a couple hours a day at each one, well, not each one, combined between the two projects throughout the summer. 2025 was the year that Brett Borner celebrated 10 years with the city. Unfortunately, it was the year that he decided to move from community development over to public utilities. So we're gonna miss Rhett. He's a great employee. The utilities are going to be glad to have him. 2026, we started out with a replacement. Brandon Sales, he's a local contractor. He's also a home inspector that we hired to fill Rhett's position. Brandon is currently, he's passed 2 of the 4 inspection tests to cover residential inspections throughout the city. He's doing a great job so far. 2026 forecast, we've already issued $31 million in projects, one being the St. Croix Valley Food Bank that I previously mentioned, and then Bella Rose Apartment number 2 has gotten started. Many of you probably have noticed. We're already in talks with the Doran Group, who is doing the active senior apartment building behind Holiday Inn. They are anxiously waiting for spring to get started. We're going to be doing a pre-construction meeting on that project in April. Gerard's project on Stage Line Road, they're coordinating their pre-construction meeting as we speak. They hope to get started in April as well. So between those 3 apartment buildings I already mentioned and potentially the one downtown, By 2027, we could be adding 370 apartment units to the city. That's all I had. There's a few extra spreadsheets in my packet. I apologize for that. The 2025 spreadsheet is the last one in the lineup. And I have printed copies if you want them. Otherwise, I'm open to questions.
Anybody?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment, I really appreciate your report. I think it's important to, sort of summarize and also look forward. It does affect the city's ability for our levy capacity as we grow. My one comment about it's good to see the growth, and we welcome people that come through multifamily and apartment dwellers, but I would love to see Hudson be able to expand. This will require annexation, of course, at some point in some direction or other, but what Hudson needs is more single-family homes. I think that's an important factor for homeowners and people that are, I just hope that that is a part of our future soon. But anyway, I appreciate your hard work. That's a lot of inspection.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Chief.
All right, I'll try to keep this brief. Enclosed in the packet tonight was the monthly report for January and February. Nothing out of the ordinary in that. The main thing tonight is the 2025 year-end report. I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to read through it. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. I just want to point out a couple items within the report. The organizational page, our average age of firefighter is 46. That's about 12 years above the national average. That's not a sustainable number, and again, that's why we're approaching having to look to some full-time staff, which we'll be talking about here probably next month or two. The consulting group will be in with a presentation on the criteria and the reasons behind moving forward with that, possible with the possible referendum. The awards page. Please take a look at that. Also, we gave out 3 major awards this year: life-saving, unit citation, meritorious service awards to our members. Did some really good things this year. And the other thing a couple other things I'll point out, the training hours, almost 4,000 combined hours of training that our members put in, which is on top of responding to calls and everything else. And the other thing that's which I think has been a very good thing. After hiring our fire inspector last June, we had over 1,800 total inspections last year. That's our fire district wide. But the glaring part, or not the glaring part, but the important part is the 535 re-inspections. Those are, if we found a violation on a life safety inspection of a business or a public property, we had to go back and do a follow-up inspection. 90% of those get taken care of the first time out, no issues, but there is some properties that we go back 3 and 4 or 5 times to deal with that. But 535 re-inspections is a lot, but having our extra fire inspector really helps out in that capacity. So again, if you haven't read it completely or you have any questions at some point, definitely feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Anybody?
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Good report.
Police report.
Lieutenant Bradley Kazmarek, I'm standing in for the chief tonight. I'm told that our February numbers are in your packet there, and that they're pretty standard with what we'd expect during a February. There is one complaint, though, that the chief wanted me to highlight, so I'll read this right now. On Sunday, February 22nd, 2026, the Hudson Police Department was notified of multiple burglaries to garages and vehicles in the same neighborhood. Investigation into that burglary led to the identification of a vehicle that was involved utilizing the Flock automatic license plate reader camera system and private doorbell video systems. Officers were able to identify the registered owner of the vehicle as well as identify a local residence this vehicle had been frequenting. During the investigation, an individual had pawned several of the stolen items related to the burglaries, and a suspect was identified. A search warrant was executed for the residence the vehicle had frequented, and a felony alert was placed on the vehicle in question. Agencies in Minnesota utilized the flock camera system and located the suspect vehicle about an hour and a half after we placed the alert on that vehicle. Inside the vehicle was the suspect from the burglaries, the same clothing and backpack seen in the video of the suspect, and several items that were taken in the burglaries. The suspect was taken into custody for the burglaries at that time. While officers were executing the search warrant at the residence, they confirmed through interviews of the residents this vehicle and subjects had frequented the residence. Officers also located a significant amount of narcotics inside the residence, and 4 subjects were arrested for possession of controlled substances. In interviews that followed those arrests, officers were informed of possible sex and human trafficking information that had been taking place. A human trafficking investigation began from there on and culminated in multiple victims being identified and multiple suspects being identified. Several search warrants and arrests were made in connection with these cases, and through our agency is continuing to investigate. A lot of information is being gathered regarding drug use, delivery, prostitution, sex trafficking, and human trafficking taking place in the city of Hudson. This case reflects how different types of criminal activity are oftentimes linked to other crimes and shows the amount of investigation required to successfully prosecute these types of crimes.
And it started with the simple flock camera identification.
Well, it started with burglaries.
Burglaries
And the vehicles were caught on flock, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. The flock didn't cost.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brad, thank you. Shelley, you wanted to postpone, and so we got Brent.
Oh, yeah. Mine is pretty simple. I think one of the most significant things that I've been working on with staff is the RFP for requests for AI services and database integration. We're trying to figure out ways that we can help department heads and departments speed up their response times and work through permitting times. And we have been able to narrow about 19 total candidates now, down to 2. We went through an initial interview, and now we're asking them to return with a best and final and proof of concept for what we're asking for. And we will need to bring that through. The question is which committee in this case. I believe it would also be finance. And in the near future, we'll check in with finance for the kind of the final steps or stages, but we're asking them for best and final and proof of concept on what it is that they say they can deliver. And so far, we're pretty impressed with the 2 that we're asking to come back. And we're going to sit there and have the conversations with them, hour and a half each. And then the next step would be present to finance committee with whichever one we're thinking would come to the next phase. So we'll make a selection. It's a number of staff. Actually, most of them are here. Actually, all of them are here. There's David sitting, that's been sitting through the interviews. We've got Sam, we've got Mike, Becky, and myself that have all sat through the interviews with with these candidates that are potentially going to bring something forward. So we're pretty excited about what they've offered so far, and we'll see where it goes from here. I think the next meeting is on the 25th.
I don't. Next
You're
week.
right, it is the 25th.
Next week. Next
25th
week.
in the afternoon, yes. So other than that, it's been really lots and lots of standard business. As you can see on the agenda, there's a lot of things going on in the city.
That it?
Yeah, I'm not, you guys have it to read. I don't want to really waste your time, so. It's getting late. We still have a closed session.
All right. Closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 sub 1, excuse me, sub G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, Express Hospitality LLC versus the City of Hudson Property Assessment and Tax Appeal. And closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, Vista Prairie tax exemption claim.
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Motion's approved. We are now in closed session across the hall. Need to say it again?
No, he's.
We're back in
good.
open session.
Move to reject the claim in alignment with legal recommendations.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Move to accept the Vista Prairie tax exemption claim.
Second.
Motion is second to accept.
I recuse myself from this.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I seconded that though.
Sarah?
Oh, okay, thanks.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I don't have anything. Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.